Hi everyone. I'm here today to talk about production tracking from the field to the office with my friends Brendan and Ron from Southmost Drywall. My role is the Senior Product Manager at StructionSite, and I've been specifically working on our production tracking tool, SmartTrack, with our lovely trade partners here, and I'll let them quickly introduce themselves. Brendan, why don't you give a quick intro about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Brendan Murray. I'm the CFO of Southmost Drywall. I've been working for Southmost for about 13 years.
And where are you based?
I'm based in Fremont, Nebraska.
Awesome. All right, Ron, go ahead and give a quick intro as well.
My name is Ron Rankin. I work for Southmost Drywall as a superintendent. Been doing it for 43 years. I've been a superintendent for 20 of those 43, and I'm based out of Lakeland, Florida.
Awesome. And as you just heard, Ron's in Florida, and he's working as the superintendent on a specific project where he's running the drywall and framing scope of work. And he's been using SmartTrack for the last couple of months to track the progress of work in place. How did you take photos of your job site before using StructionSite? Was it with a mobile device? Did you have a digital camera? Did you pay someone to do it?
Yes, digital camera, and the documentation of how much work we had in place was non-existent, except for what we paid out every week to our subs.
Got it. And how did you guys organize your photos? Did you save them to a certain folder and label them, or were they just photos on a camera?
Mostly photos on a camera.
Awesome.
And they weren't labeled for the most part.
So it was pretty difficult to go back and find something.
Yes, it was.
You know the location that it was taken.
It makes it so much easier now.
Awesome. And how did you guys track production before?
I used a measuring wheel. I used blueprints and a scale. I highlighted the plans, and I hand measured things. You know, where I couldn't use the wheel and couldn't use the plans, I had to go and measure everything with a measuring tape. Got it.
And is that something that you were doing, weekly, daily? How often were you going out and checking?
We should have been doing it daily, but it was mostly once or twice a week.
Got it. And how much time did that process take you?
Anywhere from 4 to 8 hours a week.
And how accurate was that process?
It wasn't. And that was the big problem. A lot of times we would overpay guys because we would pay them for work that wasn't in place that we thought was in place.
And were you the only one doing the material install checking, or did you have other members of your crew checking that as well?
I always had other people checking, but for the most part, I tried to oversee it as well as I could.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just, from project to project, is this done consistently throughout Southmost?
No, everybody did it differently. It was all... some would highlight, some would just send in a written report. It was all different.
And did all of those projects, the way they were tracking it, did they all have similar accuracy, or were some of them better than others?
Of course, some were better than others, because some guys are better than other guys. It's just the reality.
Brendan, I'm sure you kept tabs on the ones that you didn't trust the accuracy.
Sure, something like that.
Awesome. And then what were some of the pain points that you experienced?
I think the time that was involved in doing it was the biggest pain points.
Got it. And if you were to say in your own words what SmartTrack does on your project, maybe just give a quick sentence of what you think SmartTrack does.
It documents all our work we have in place. it, and that includes all the top track, bottom track, studs, bulkheads, soffits, ceilings, drywall. It's an amazing software. It really is.
Awesome. And how does site documentation pair with and work together with SmartTrack?
Well, as it documents what work is in place, it builds a database of the linear footage, the square footage of both metal and drywall.
Awesome. And you had said before your photo documentation was lacking and needed improvement. And now that you've been doing video walks and collecting all of this photo documentation, what are some of the other benefits that you've seen from having these photos?
Well, proof of where we are and at what time where we're there. You never lose an argument as to what was in place and what wasn't in place. You know, it's a wonderful thing. It really is.
Not having to go look through a camera's memory card to find the specific photo is always a good thing.
Yeah, no doubt.
Awesome. Now, jumping into your experience with SmartTrack, you guys obviously joined the beta and were early adopters using this tool as it was kind of coming from the ground up. What was your experience like from beta testing when we were building the product to using it now?
Well, early on, we didn't have the SmartTrack, and you know that. You know, all it was a documentation. And myself personally, I started off a little rocky because it's somebody that showed me how to use it, didn't know themselves how to use it, and I didn't learn until you yourself actually taught me. And so it's changed quite a bit as far as from the beginning till now. You know, we went through the process of being able to document walls, then being able to document ceilings. Now we can document soffits and bulkheads, and so it's every week it seems like we've got something better.
Ooh, I love that. And what have been some of the benefits of being a beta tester with us?
Learning it as we go and not having to learn it all at once. I'm sure a lot of guys coming into it right now didn't have the fortunate time that I did, you know, to be able to learn everything as we go.
Yeah, that's great. And how does SmartTrack work on specifically the project that you're working on?
Great. I mean, it's the documentation takes me approximately 2 hours a week that I spend. And some weeks, maybe a tiny bit more, some weeks less, as to how much I need to be documented.
And when you say document, Ron, that's the time it takes you to go and do the video walks on site, right?
That's right. And now that besides taking pictures as we go, you have the ability to take a single shot if you're in a room and you put that shot right on the blueprint. So you know where the picture was taken and you know what day and time it was taken at.
Awesome. And how many floors is your project?
It's 3.
And what's the overall square footage of each of those floor plates?
Oh, geez, I'm not sure.
I threw a curveball at you there.
Yes, you did.
I should have written that question down. Just want to give people an idea of like how big the project for how
it's got a large footprint.
Yeah, large footprint. Yeah. So 2 hours, you've got 3 floors, a large footprint, and that's comparing to the 4 to 8 hours it was taking you to manually track everything before.
And not only that, it's the accuracy that it's doing it at that time. You know, that makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And do you typically spot check the quantities of work in place that SmartTrack is outputting?
I've been, yeah. And it's amazingly accurate. And
that's great. So do you use the process tab, go in and check the work that's been statused and then make any changes that, maybe your human brain is a little bit more savvy around?
I haven't yet.
Awesome.
But having the ability is great alone.
Yeah. If for some reason something does get caught that's wrong, you can always go back and change it.
Which is great. But I haven't found it yet.
Oh, that's even better to hear. The idea is that the process tab doesn't have to be used, but it's there if we need it. It's our security blanket.
But any problems we have had in the past, StructionSite has been more than willing to work to fix it.
That's what we're here for. And so why is this information helpful to you?
Well, for all the reasons I just mentioned, the ability to not have to know where the pictures were taken, the time they were taken, and we're still learning how to utilize all the data that we're receiving, which I'm sure that in the future there's going to be more and more how we use it, as to use it for estimating and cost analysis, and I'm sure Brendan can speak a lot more to that than I can.
Yeah, absolutely. And just speaking a little bit more to your project, you typically gather your production or the work that was done at the end of that week, and then you use the information that's generated from SmartTrack to pay out all of your vendors for the quantities of work that they had completed that week. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
How else are you using the information that's populated?
Well, I use it, like I said earlier, to win arguments, to prove that we've got the work done that we say we've got done. But I haven't used it for much more than that.
Got it. And now that you're starting to get some trends around how much work your crews are able to do, is that something that you plan to look back on for the next project you go to?
Absolutely. This is going to be very helpful as to the progress that we've made, and to be able to not have to try to remember it. It's, set in stone.
Yeah. And with 20 years experience, it makes it a lot easier to understand what can get done in a week. But for your younger superintendents or foremen that are coming up through the ranks, this will hopefully be helpful information for them to get that kind of baseline knowledge of how much work can be done in a day. What can a crew size do?
Absolutely.
And speaking of,
it helps us older guys with our memory.
That's there you go. There's a benefit for you. And then how easy or hard is it for your crews in the field to use StructionSite?
I've been the only one using it on mine, so Brendan will probably have to answer that better than me. He knows who's using it and on what jobs they're using it and how well they're utilizing it.
Got it. Brendan, you want to take a stab at that answer?
Yeah, so the ease of use question, I think everyone that interacts with it has really found it easy to use. And has found there's always issues when you're trying to implement something new. There's always hurdles, so it's not always super simple. But I'd say overall it's been everything's gone well. Yeah, the only issues we have with ease of use isn't really a StructionSite issue. It's usually some sort of hardware issue or some sort of user confusion or so it's usually not a StructionSite problem. It's usually some other problem.
Yeah, and that's the challenge of having a camera, a light, a mobile device. Yeah. There's lots of different moving parts and pieces, and it's making sure that we're making it as easy as possible for the guys to go out and capture.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, Bren, I'm going to switch back to Ron here. So, Ron, how has your experience been using SmartTrack to track production in the field compared to how you were doing it before?
Well, obviously, it's a big difference. I mean, it's, the difference between, flying to the moon and riding a horse. So that's seriously. Yeah, it is. It's been a big difference. I can't describe it any other way but that. It's for anybody to understand.
And for you, how much time is this saving you roughly per week?
I would say at least 10 hours.
Wow, that's a lot of savings.
Yeah.
So now that you have, potentially 10 hours back each week, what else can you get done on the job site now?
Well, it saves, it opens me up for all kinds of different things. Longer lunches and.
Yeah, right. I've been on meetings with you. Your phone's always ringing. Awesome. And you already answered this one a little bit, but the accuracy of SmartTrack. For teams that are picking this tool up for the first time, how would you go about verifying the accuracy?
Well, it'd have to be done within, by hand. There's no other way of doing it. And that is checking that is difficult enough. So to me, I would trust StructionSite before I trust somebody measuring. That's
a great answer. And what are some of the largest benefits that you've seen from having this plethora of images now on your project?
Again, just knowing where we are and knowing what we have in place on what date. It's the production that proves itself.
Yeah.
With the software.
And have you run into any situations where someone on site has said that they had done work that you have now documentation around? I believe you told me a story about this.
Well, there's been a couple times, but one in particular, the plumber claimed that he had put his measurements in place ahead of our framing to get us to frame stuff that we weren't responsible for. And I went back in, and sure enough, it wasn't there. So, and it was dated and documented, and it was an easy argument to win with the software. If I didn't have it, there's no way I could have won the argument.
That's fantastic. And hopefully that's the power of SiteDoc plus SmartTrack, is that now not only do you have all of these images that you can use for other situations on your job site, but you're also getting accurate quantities of work in place tracked.
Very true.
Well, Ron, is there anything else you want to say about SmartTrack before we switch over to Brendan here?
Just that I'm glad we have it. And I'm glad we were lucky that Brendan found it and allows us to utilize it.
Awesome. Well, with that, I'm going to switch over to Brendan. And I know your role is slightly different than Ron. You're not sitting on a job site. Is that correct?
That's correct. I'm at the office.
And your office is a flight away from most of your job sites. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So our corporate office is in Fremont, Nebraska, and almost all of our jobs are all in the southern states. So we don't even have work near our corporate office.
So how often do you typically go out to visit the jobs, or how often do you have team members that have to go to these jobs from the Nebraska office?
So we have some. So we have a few project managers here that they do go down probably once a month or once every other month, depending on what the job is and where it is in its progress.
Got it. And now that you have StructionSite and you have access to photos, has it been helpful for you managing some of these projects remotely?
Yeah, for sure. We kind of started using SmartTrack and StructionSite right before everything with COVID happened. So back in February, March, April, we just weren't able to actually go and travel. You can't take a flight, So there was a time where even if we all wanted to go visit Ron, we just weren't able to. So I mean, it made a really big impact at that time, for sure.
Yeah, as much as we want to go to that beach that Ron's at in Florida, we can't right now. So his photos are going to have to satisfy us here.
Yep.
So what prompted you to look into a photo solution in the first place?
Yeah, I'm always trying to figure out how we can get better data from the field, and always trying to bridge these gaps with our office and our guys in the field, um, and um, and so that's the mindset we're always thinking about. We're always trying to figure out how to do that better. Um, and so I was introduced to StructionSite um, through one of our other softwares. Um, yeah, we just kind of went after it and hit the ground running.
Awesome. And as the CFO, what's the value of production tracking for your business?
So, I mean, as any CFO could probably tell you, that production in the construction business is what's going to separate those businesses that do well and those that really struggle. It doesn't take much to figure out how to get a big load of studs to show up at a location. It doesn't take a lot to figure out how to get a bunch of drywall to show up. But trying to get that and turn it into something in some sort of efficient manner, that's the business, you know. Really, it's what our whole business revolves around, is trying to figure out how to produce something and how to do it efficiently. And in order to know that, you have to be able to track it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And maybe can you tell us a little bit about how your company tracked production before using SmartTrack?
Yeah, so Ron kind of said some of these things also, but from the office point of view, we didn't get a lot of that data. There were guys that they would definitely keep track of their own data, and they would share it. But by the time it got to the office, it was outdated and didn't really make any sense to anybody besides the guy that took it. So there wasn't really something. We didn't really have anything that we were actually using at all our job sites. And then anytime we did get something like that, it was always pretty well scrutinized, of like, well, how can we even know this is right, or what does this even mean? And this is now, something that's 3 weeks old. So what does that tell us about anything? So we didn't have much. Long story short.
But you knew it was important, and that's why
important.
you started looking for solutions.
Absolutely.
And speaking maybe a little bit more to the estimating side of things, how did your company come up with production rates for estimates?
Really, I mean, the way that you would come up with production rates is that you would call a guy like Ron and say, Ron, how many lineal feet should a good framer be able to do in a day? And Ron would tell you what his best guess was. And if you were really gonna try to figure it out, you might call a few of our other guys and try to come up with an average. But it was really just kind of, trying to lean on those guys that have the experience that could tell you that. So that's really the way that we would do it.
Yeah. Leveraging a lot of experienced professionals, but not necessarily through any kind of hard data. It's not all data driven. Very much of driven by the personality, which is a lot of variables. Yeah. And how has SmartTrack helped your company track production?
So it gives us a very unbiased view of the job. There's always those instances where if you called up one of the superintendents and asked them, how are you doing on framing this day on this floor? maybe that superintendent just got in a big fight with like one of the guys out there, and he would say, "Oh man, it's going terrible. These guys are horrible," But then you go out there and say, "Oh man, it looks like we're getting things done though," And so there's so many variables that go into the job, and such a big human factor in the construction industry that anytime we can try to see past the human factor. You don't want to take it out, of course, but try to see past it and try to get real data is important. And that's something that SmartTrack has really helped us do.
Absolutely. And for you, you're based in the head office and you have jobs everywhere. Has it given you a better visibility into the state of the different projects that you have underway?
Yeah, for sure. One thing we started doing during this time of COVID is we've been doing a lot more. Kind of just like team calls, team chats, stuff like that, and it really gives us something as a team that we can look at all together and kind of really look at something and not just kind of talk about what one guy's seeing or something.
Got it. So are you guys looking at the SmartTrack floor plans, or are you looking at the photos, or both?
We spend a lot of time looking at the dashboard. Is one of our favorites for our meetings. We also do look at the photos for those times when there's like a very like a specific question when we're trying to figure out like a detail in a certain area. We would then definitely use the videos.
That's great. And what is the main problem that SmartTrack is solving for you in your specific role?
The big thing is trying to get some sort of unbiased data that you can rely on while not being there, and trying to get this stream of data coming in that you can then build other systems around, and trying to understand how the job is going, and not just relying on someone's view of it, but more of a full view, more of an unbiased view of the job.
Yeah, and speaking to that, SmartTrack's quantifying work in place, and it's giving you % complete. But we all know that production, like you've said a couple of times now, is drastically dependent on the human factor. And the piece of SmartTrack that we don't have is the labor component. How are you looking to tie SmartTrack to your labor information so that you can look at the whole puzzle?
So we do that by we are comparing our % completes through SmartTrack to our cost, to our budgets. That's where you'll start to see what your production is. You might not. We aren't quite getting to the point where obviously we can't tell you how many lineal feet George installed that day or something to that degree, but you can at least start to see, okay, we've spent 40% of our framing budget on this floor, but we're only 20% framed out according to SmartTrack. There's a production issue. Something's happening here, So it's not to the degree where you can pinpoint the issue, but it at least raises the red flag earlier, because in the past you would say, well, we've spent 40% of our framing money, we must be 40% done. Then at the end of the job, you would say, oh, we spent 150% of our framing budget, and we were just not productive the whole time, or we were not productive for at least a portion of it. But
so for the jobs where you went over budget, which it's inevitable, things happen on the job site, did you do postmortems? Is that how you were trying to figure out what had happened?
Yeah, we always do that. And it's very much of a, I mean, how do you do a good post-mortem? Especially we do a lot of big jobs that'll last 2 years long. Um, so then you get to the end of the job and you say, we were way over budget on framing. And you start asking the question, why? And there's a lot of finger pointing. It was that guy. If the other trades would have helped us, we didn't get any help from the GCs. Those electricians, they were always in the way. You know, I mean, it's you never really understand what's going on. You know, you're at the end, so you're always this kind of like you're always left guessing what the cause was.
And do you think that now that you're checking this more consistently and you almost like have an element of a baseline at these snapshots in time, do you think that you're able to hopefully be more proactive in addressing problems as they arise?
Absolutely, yeah. That's a big part of it, is being able to keep your pulse on the job in pretty close to real time. Depending on which package you choose.
Yeah, and have you found it to be, and be honest here, have you found it to be pretty easy to get the teams to go out and capture on a weekly basis?
No, we have not. I have to really hand it to everybody at StructionSite. They've been great at they've really trained our people for us. Trying to implement new technology in the field is really tough. I think anybody could tell you that. But the guys at StructionSite have been really good about trying to really like follow up with the guys that are doing all the video walks. They do a good job of calling them, asking if they have any problems, what can we do, what's your issue, you know, and trying to really work through it. I've been pretty hands off with the actual implementation, which is big for me. I'm usually the guy that's, you know, has to call every day. What's wrong? Let me help you fix your iPad. You know, like so that's been a really big deal. So it's not. So yes, we've struggled to be consistent with our video walks, but I'm not calling that a StructionSite problem. I'm calling that just it's just tough to implement new things, and so
yeah.
So we're still trying to figure that out, how to make this more of a mainstay of our systems, but we're getting there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always the struggle, introducing new tools, technologies, processes. As Ron said, his to-do list never ends, even though he wants to take longer lunches, and there's always things to do, and it's hard to build a new habit around a new workflow. So from when we first started using SmartTrack to now, do you think the teams have improved around kind of the changed process?
You mean like have they gotten better at doing their video walks?
Yeah.
Or, yeah, some have. Some have done really well. Ron does a great job. There's a few other guys that do a really good job. Some of them it's still a struggle, but it's more of a workload issue than like a tech issue though. So
yeah. And how are some of the ways that you're going about incentivizing or requiring people do this capture consistently?
We haven't quite incentivized it yet. I have some ideas in mind that we might implement on any new jobs that are going to be starting up. It's always a good time to kind of change the system when you start a new job. So we don't have any incentives at the moment. But yeah.
Always something new to test out, right? See what helps the teams. You guys have been working with us for a while, and now that we're collecting all of this information, something that you and I have been talking about is how can you start leveraging all of this historical data? and how can you use this information to make, your estimates more accurate or understand more around productivity. So what else would you want this system to do, or how else would you want to leverage this information?
Yeah, so what I'm really hopeful for is that we'll be able to integrate this data with a lot of other softwares. I mean, you could get the wheels turning, and there could be so many more uses for this data that we aren't quite there yet. You could be, I mean, if you could just get it into your system for estimating, getting into your job costing, being able to just share all your site doc stuff with other trades, with your general contractors. I mean, when you start to see how much data is coming in, you could see just a lot of other uses for it. You just kind of have to start to build those bridges.
And we can't say anything yet, but Brendan has been working on the one of our integrations to get this information into one of his systems of record. So hopefully we'll have more news to announce around that by the end of this year. So Brendan, you had talked a little bit about your estimating system. I know you've been coordinating the setup of the data in SmartTrack. Maybe talk a little bit to how that's gone and what have been some of the either challenges or benefits of that.
Yeah, so part of setting up your data for SmartTrack is you have to go and do a separate takeoff in the you have to do a separate takeoff in SmartTrack. It's at first we were kind of like, oh man, what a pain, we have to do another takeoff. But it's been we've been using it as a good tool. We've been having some of our younger estimators doing that takeoff. It's a good way to, like, because the takeoff is very simple. It's not it's a very simple takeoff. It's really good for a guy that's learning to estimate to kind of start to read plans, start to interpret wall types, and trying to understand the plans, but not in a way that you have him bidding like a multi-million-dollar project, or it's a good way to it ends up being a good way to educate and a young estimator, but still gain value and not just do tons of training, tons of like having your junior estimator just like go and do all these takeoffs that don't really add any value, or just so they can learn. It's been good for that, and it's been good for training, but still adding value is what's been good. And then the actual process of doing the takeoffs has been simple. Yeah.
That's good. And then I know you have been the one specifically doing the tagging so that you can export the information in a way that's consumable. Mm-hmm. How has the setup of tags and creating different wall conditions been helpful for you to be able to consume the information?
Yeah, it's been a good way. It ends up, I guess, the benefit of the tags is that it lets you start to consume the data any way you want. You can add tags for a lot of all kinds of things, and then you can start to use the data as you need it. So you're not stuck with not just stuck with framing and drywall. You can do all kinds of stuff with it. So.
Yeah. And Ron, that's something that I didn't ask you. Have you been using tags to parse up the information in the way that you're building the project?
Not yet.
Not yet.
But I intend on it. But I want to do that on the next project, because we started using it on this one about a quarter of the way through the project.
Yeah, I don't think we had tags released.
And at that time, no, we didn't have the tags yet.
Awesome. And then Brendan, my question for you is, what is the value of accurate production rates for your office?
I mean, like I said earlier, it's the most valuable thing. If you can figure out what's to be expected, you can start to understand how your job is going. You can start to really see where your problems are early.
Yeah, that's great. And you had told me a story a few months back about a job that was looking to get payments for work that had been done. And do you mind sharing the story of your project manager and your superintendent and how the conversation about how much work was done went?
Yeah, so we've had those during some of our team meetings. We here at the office will ask that question to a project manager and a superintendent. Say, so how, for example, how far framed are you on the third floor? And there was these instances. I mean, it's always a bit of a guess, So the PM would say, well, I think we're like 30% done. And the superintendent's like, oh, no, we're not. We're way further than that. We're like 70% done, and so then you have to like, well, who's right? Maybe you just split the difference. Maybe how do you figure it out? But that's where we were able to use SmartTrack and really get in there and figure out, okay, this is what it's saying you're done. And then everybody was like, oh, okay.
And who was right?
I don't remember now. I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus.
No names.
No names.
Awesome. And then just what are some of the largest benefits you've seen from SmartTrack itself?
From SmartTrack?
Yeah.
Yeah. So being able to link the office and the job site and being able to get data to the office quickly and super accurate has been huge. And it's really changed the way that we do our team meetings, really gives us something to kind of look at as a team, instead of this kind of like, it changes the dynamic of our team also. It makes us more of a team, not the kind of like the people in the office saying, why'd you spend so much? And the guy in the field saying, well, it's because it costs so much, or, well, I'm actually really far done. And the people in the office being like, well, we don't believe you. And, it kind of brings us together as a team, gives us something to look at and to work on as a team.
Yeah. You're taking away the opinions and you're hopefully bringing in facts, and you can always go back and look at the pictures and see the story without having to hear it from two different perspectives or mindsets.
Yeah.
I like that. And what are some of the largest benefits you've seen from site documentation? So having all of these images.
So site documentation is really good for the office. I mean, we're used to, you would get an email to a link in Dropbox with 100 random photos in it and say, look at these photos. And you would be like, what does this even mean? Where are these? You'd be like, or you get like a text message to your phone of like a hole in a wall. And it'd be like, what should we do about that? Like, who made the hole? What happened here? Where is it? And so just having everything centralized in one program, and then that program gives a lot of context to that image, because an image without a context doesn't really mean anything. If you just have a picture of a hole in a wall, I mean, what does that mean? But if you have that, if you can have that timestamp, if you have a picture of it, or if you have it located on the plans, then you have something. Then you can see what that means.
And submit the RFI for the
Yep.
specific location, or ask the
Yep.
question to the other trade partner that put the hole on the wall. What happened there?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, that's all for the questions that we have here. Is there anything else, Ron or Brendan, that you guys want to add to this conversation?
I don't think so.
Thank you for being so good to work with.
Yeah, I agree with Ron. You guys have been great to work with.
Yeah, you guys too. Right back at you.